Consciousness, the final frontier. These are the voyages into the universe between your ears. Our mission, to explore collective wisdom, seek out amazing secrets, and spread the message of personal potential.
And it's sad because typically what happens is I work with one person and then they're like, could you talk to my husband or could you talk to my partner? Mm-hmm. And so I end up dealing with both. In fact, one woman, I even worked with her mother because she was a big influence in her life. Mm-hmm. And it's powerful. And when I'm working with the couple, with the two people, I do separate calls and then I join them together at some point when I feel it's appropriate. They do not hear the same thing. What she said and what he said, and I'm in the middle interpreting it, they're like, oh, I didn't see it that way. But I'm an independent, objective view. I don't hold any judgment. They can say whatever they want. Mm-hmm. So because I can hear them the way they're saying it, I have no skin in the game. And I translate it to the way I know that she's receiving it. It's a completely different conversation. It's like, really? Mm-hmm. I didn't even realize I was reacting to you that way.
There's also a component there that you're an authority figure, mm-hmm. and they're going to listen mm-hmm. because you're an authority figure in their minds.
Mm-hmm. Right? And I'm not.
That you're close to, and it doesn't matter what their education is or anything else, but you're too close, and that's just Bob.
Absolutely. Well, and you can't coach your partner. You just can't. If I was in a relationship with someone right now who needed me to be a coach, we couldn't be in a relationship. I can't coach them. I can't remain objective. I'm going to have my own patterns of relationship that I need to be aware of to coach you to get there. Not that we can't have an open conversation and encourage each other, but if we're not both self-aware and having a healthy, productive pattern of communication, then you can't switch out of those modes. And so a lot of people think they can, but that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, it's tough. And there's bleed over too, right? Conversations about sex, conversations about money, conversations about relationships in general. Kind of, you're all you're gonna follow the same patterns because those are the patterns and you're going to end up with the same sorts of dysfunction, right?
Absolutely. That's what happens all the time. And, to be able to break free from that, you have to first identify, what are you really saying? What do you really mean? What do you really need? Because, we'll say things, but it's a smoke screen. It's not really what we're looking for, and then you need to be comfortable saying it, and that it may not be received the way you want, and you may not get the reaction you want. Yeah. But you have to be true to what that is. Sometimes when you ask for something and it's not fulfilled, you have to decide that I'm going to follow through with the consequence of that. You're not going to fulfill my needs. Okay, I'm going to move on. And that's tough. But that's taking 100% responsibility. You can't, you can only offer up so much. And if the other person is not willing, it doesn't make them a bad person. It just means that it's not the right person for you at that time, whether it's a client or,
what you said was interesting because I have developed I think a speaking pattern because of my desire to be understood when the words come out. Mm-hmm. And so an idea comes, and just like I'm trying to do now, an idea comes and I don't just like, right? Because I'm afraid that it won't be understood. And the ironic thing is that it doesn't matter anyway, because I can be as careful with my words as I want to be, and it's still going to be misunderstood if it's going to be misunderstood.
No, absolutely. And not everyone's ready for the message. And, have you ever read a book more than once or heard a podcast or an interview or seen a quote, and it's almost like you don't hear it? You're like, oh my God, I know that looks familiar, but today it resonates. That's because you're at a different level of awareness. Mm-hmm. I've bought books that sat on my bookshelf. I read all the time. They sat on my bookshelf for 6 months. I pick it up and then I read it in 2 days. But I wasn't ready for it 6 months ago, even though the title struck me. It just wasn't meant to be in my level of awareness. Or I'll half read a book and I got what I need from this. I can't. But then I'll go back to it and be like, oh my God, this is the best book ever. Well, you picked it up 6 months ago. It just wasn't what I was looking for.
Well, you're a different person, right?
Yeah, completely. And, that is one of the beautiful things about the kind of work that I'm able to do is, as I evolve, I can expand what I'm offering people around me, but also to see them, like the sparks of light that happen when I help them break through an area. I was one woman, she believed, I was helping her work on her money issues, and I had her write down her sexual fantasies, and she swore she didn't have any. And I said, okay, that's fine. So let's talk about why you don't have any and it really was because sex was such a bad thing outside of marriage that she couldn't even open up to the possibility of having a sexual fantasy. And so we did some exercises, had her read an erotica book, have her, write a paragraph about her favorite sexual experience to date. And she sent it to me, and just the act of sharing it with another person, she was like, oh my God, we've tapped into something. And then it was like, she filled up pages of them after that. But it's so surprising how we close down in so many areas. I also have an exercise I do. I've done this with men and women, actually. I was going to say women, but I've done it with men and women, called a sensual selfie. And it's for people who do not appreciate their body and just think that, I can't be sexual or, whatever. And one woman in particular, she was a bodybuilder. She was a fitness model that was competing on stage, and she was used to criticizing her body for the muscle tone. This needs to be bigger, this needs to be more defined, but she wasn't tapped into her sexual energy at all. And, your sexual energy is your charismatic energy. It's your creative energy. That's all the same energy. So if you're on stage, you got to be charismatic. You got to sell your body. And, she was like, but you're so confident. You're so beautiful. And, I am a plus size woman, very happy with my body. I love it. And people feel that energy immediately, and they're like, how do you do that? And I'm like, well, let's start exploring what is it in your head when you look at your body? What is the message that's really being said? And she had struggled through eating disorder. She, had never seen her body in an appreciative sense. So we did the sensual selfie. She had to pick one part of her body, and it can be your ankle. It doesn't have to be anything sexual. Take a picture of it, and then name 3 things that you love about that. And if you can, share the picture. So she's like, I really like my back. So she ended up taking a picture of her back, which also curved into the top of her ass, and sent it to me. And she's like, oh my God, I can't believe how beautiful my back is. Like, she had never seen it in that way because she was always looking on how to improve the muscle tone.
Criticizing.
Yeah,
she's always criticizing
absolutely.
instead of appreciating.
Absolutely. And so when she sent that to me, she's like, I also sent it to my lover, and now he's on his way over, because she hadn't tapped into him in like a month or whatever it was. And she's like, I'm so excited. But we lose sight of those things, especially women who've had babies, or, I've worked a lot of men who used to take time to work out, and now they feel flabby, and my body's not the same. And, well, okay, so let's look at how can we appreciate the body you have right now. Doesn't mean you don't want to make improvements, sure, but you have to love it now, because it won't matter if you go to the gym 7 days a week. After, you're still not going to love your body. And it's a beautiful thing to see them switch like that.
How common is it that people, because what's going through my head is kind of a couple of different things. One being that we learn to love ourselves or not love ourselves. And if we're in a place where we're not loving our body, it's something we have learned.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that we would carry that with us if we go to the gym and transform, but we're still haven't reframed how we're looking at ourselves.
Absolutely. That's why I say everything is mindset. Everything. And it's the most important area you can study. I put something up on my wall the other day. You can have the best copy. You can have the best business strategy. You may have the best service or product or idea that everybody in the world needs. And if you don't have the right mindset, you won't sell a damn thing. You won't put yourself out there. You won't do the videos. You won't connect with people. Whatever you need to do, you won't do it because you don't have the right mindset that goes into it. And it's so critical that you look at those things. In fact, there's a lot of clients that I work with who have spent thousands of dollars on these types of things and never got any value from it, or very little value. And then after we unlock these patterns, they're like, oh my God, I can use this, and I took that, and I can put this in place, and whatever. It allows them to use the tools they have and take steps in different ways.
Yeah, that's a great point. I see a lot of people, successful people, telling their stories, and I'm quite amazed just how in touch they are with their true selves, right? And I'm thinking, you know what, they did make that journey. They traveled that journey, and they are where they are for a reason. You know, they really did invest. And the true path towards success is really through transformation, right? Anything else is going to be a short kind of deviation, but then you come right back to crisis, I think, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Well, that's, you know, it's I call them the cycles of self-sabotage. There's, you know, people who their money stories, they can't make more money than their parents made. They have a loyalty to how much money you can make, and they'll get to a certain threshold of money, and then they'll start losing business. You know, one gentleman that I worked with, he was in his third marriage, happy, but every time he was married, he stopped making money. And when he came to me, he originally came to me for a sexual reason, he thought, and then he saw some of my videos and he's like, oh, wait a minute, you can help me on my business side. So we actually focused on the business, and he had no business running at the time. He was involved in a few things, but nothing that he really could sink his teeth in. We got him a business idea that was right in front of him and had been for a number of years. He had done it in different iterations, and you know, ended up making $70,000. And when he improved the areas that we looked at, he was showing up more confidently in business and making decisions, and just like, talk about charisma. He came home and said something to his wife, and, you know, in 10 years of their marriage, there was something he wanted to do sexually that she was not open to. He said it, and immediately she did it, and she's like, oh my God, can you do that like all the time? It was her best sexual experience with him. And he's like, oh my, we didn't even talk about the sex yet. And I said, no, because we unlocked your confidence, your charisma in that area. It translated into the bedroom. And that's why these things are so connected, and you can leverage one place to improve the other. It's, you know, it's so beautiful. I just love it.
Hey, may I ask you something off topic? Maybe it's going to be interesting. What is your thinking on open relationships that now, you know, are, I guess, you know, seen more and more frequently in our society? Have you had any experience with that? And what's your view on this?
Yeah, lots of experience. So, you know, I really think it is a beautiful thing when the people involved are truly in touch with what they really want, need, and desire, and have true and honest communication. How rare is that? Really fucking rare. People do not always, they cannot necessarily have that level of openness, and like, there's jealousy that runs through it. You know, this is probably the first generation coming out now that will be raised with the concept of really open relationships, because they've always kind of been there, but it was hush hush and it wasn't open and whatever. But, you know, David Deida, I think that's how you pronounce his name, wrote a book called The Way of the Superior Man, which I highly recommend to everyone. And he talks about this. He talks about being a man that can truly open up a woman. And I'm talking heterosexual. It's not necessarily the same, but it is kind of, he does talk about homosexual or lesbian relationships as well, masculine energy, feminine energy. But if you're fully in your masculine, being able to take on another lover, you have to be sure that you're fully satisfying the feminine energy that you have in your life there. And he said very few men can, because they're not fully in their masculine. And so until you can, until she's fully into her mode of love and trust, it causes conflicts, because you're not able to both see it the way you want to. And so I think it is possible, absolutely. I think it is something that people should explore for themselves, along with exploring what is it you really want? Why are you attracted to an open relationship? Is there something about the open relationship that you think is going to solve another problem? You know, is it going to spice up your marriage, kind of thing? If that's what you're looking for, don't do it, because that is not what's going to happen. You're going to end up with bigger issues in the end, because you're not dealing with the core issue that's there. So I think you have to take a really mature view about it, and, you know, am I doing this to avoid, solve, change something else? Because if you are, it's not the right thing. But I have worked with people who are in open relationships, and it works for them. Will it always work for them? I'm not sure, because they, we did some really good mindset work, and they were shifting in some areas, and it may not be what ends up happening for long term.
I think generally we're not wired for it. We have the whole male, this is my harem, this is my herd of women, right? Females. And it's not about making them happy. It's about spreading the seed. And I just think that's genetically how things are wired. And
that's a strong,
not that it can't happen, but I think generally speaking, I don't think humans are, I don't think any animal really is truly wired for that. I could be wrong, but.
For what, monogamy or open relationship?
For the open relationship kind of idea, where it's all just pre-love and nobody's jealous and nobody's.
I think in the animal kingdom, it actually is common to be polyamorous or polygamous or whatever term you want to use. That's common, except for swans and penguins, and there's one other one that they mate for life. I can't remember all of them. There's 3 or 4 that mate for life. But I think, it's, see, I don't believe in forever. I don't believe in, happily ever after necessarily. I think it is beautiful for the ones that do find it and have it. I think if you're both evolving and fulfilling each other's spiritual growth, and spiritual growth includes love, sex, passion, intelligence, all, whatever needs you want to put under there. While that's still happening together, individually and together, then it's great. But if you're in a situation where that doesn't happen for one, or it doesn't work together anymore, then then forever is not possible. So if that's the case, then you could have someone in your life that opens up one door and the other person is opening another one. Yeah. Does it happen at the same time? Maybe, I think it's something that we're seeing more and more. So you have to have the conversation about it. I don't know if I believe in the wired, or that's, historically, polyamorous relationships have always been there. They just were shunned or quiet or hidden. Does that make them right, or what people really want? Probably not. I bet if they had different levels of communication, they may not be looking for something else. Or if they are, it's like a temporary need to fulfill a sexual desire or fantasy they have, because there's nothing wrong with sexual fantasies that include more than one person, in my view, anyway, if that's really what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point you're bringing up, because, if people continue evolving and took different paths, right, and they no longer find themselves, first of all, fulfilling to each other, right, and the needs that they have. I think by way of our society, for socioeconomic reasons, right, we kind of sort of like forced into staying in those unhappy relationships, right? But as the society becomes freer, and as the abundance is increased in the society, there will be fewer and fewer reasons to continue doing that, right? And then I think people will discover that they want to stay in a relationship for the true reasons, and if there are no reasons to stay there, they'll just move on, right? The pressures of I will say, in my view, right, the whole thing is messed up by the socioeconomic reasons, the pressures, right? Raising kids is a big deal. Try to raise it. The biggest issue is single moms raising kids. We know that, right? So, if you're a mom who has a couple of kids and your husband found another love interest and left you, try to get another partner who will raise those children, and that's it. This is a very dead-end situation for anyone, right? This situation I'm very familiar with, and I think that for those moms, right, what have you seen those as your clients? I mean, people who are in this situation, and now basically, what do? I mean, they're in the perfect, wonderful sexual age, and suddenly they just don't have any access, and they have kids, right?
Yeah. I mean, that happens a lot. It's really about, first of all, getting them comfortable with self-pleasure, enjoying your body for yourself, with yourself, and exploring that. Many women don't. A lot of women are not. It's not. We don't even hear about masturbation for most women. But then it's also, being willing to put in the time that you need to feel great about going out, and being okay. Let go of the guilt of the fact that you need to hire a babysitter to go out on a Friday night. You need to go out on a Friday night, girlfriend. Like, get your ass out there.
Yeah.
But there's so much guilt and shame that comes along with that. You need to make money in your business, and you need to make enough so that you can include self-care. It is important to take care of yourself. It's important to show your kids that you're important enough to take care of. And so it's really unbuttoning all of that and giving them permission to appreciate themselves, their body, the fact that they are in sex life. The other thing is that this happens so often. It's less, in fact, I don't even know if I've had an experience where it is for men, but women's sex drive, if they don't use it, if they don't tap into the sex energy, it can go dormant, and it goes dormant really easily, especially if they're in high situations of stress or using the masculine energy. Because they're running a business, or they have a high profile job, or they're a single parent. A lot of times that forces them into situations of stress or masculine energy. Nothing wrong with that. We all have masculine and feminine energy. But if they're in that mode, that is not where they find their sexuality. That is not where they tap into their sex energy. And so the longer they go without, the longer they can go without. I had one woman, she's like, I really like my husband, but I just don't feel like having sex with him, and I don't want him to leave because I don't want to have sex. And I said, did you ever like sex? And she goes, actually, I loved it. And I said, okay, so what is holding you back? And she's like, well, I'm stressed about this and that and the other thing, and business is not going well and all this stuff. And I said, okay, and after you have sex, what happens? She's like, oh my God, I want to have it again and again and again and again. And so what we got her to do was to realize that her business life was taking over her sex life. Her stress, she couldn't disconnect. And the other thing is that a lot of times we don't understand that a woman gets lit up outside of her body first, outside of the bedroom. There's always the joke about do the dishes and that's foreplay. Kind of is, like pay attention to the cues, right? Woo, wine or diner. And it doesn't even have to be that you have to spend money, but light a candle, run a bath for her, and make the bed, or do a load of laundry while she's in the tub, and then see how quickly you get laid. It's going to change. It really does change. And for a man, you just have to get undressed to get in the tub, and that's good enough. That doesn't make it wrong. None of that's wrong. It's beautiful. I love that men can do that. But we have to better understand each other, and to know that if you give her one hell of a kiss before you leave in the day, back her into the wall while you kiss her and walk out, she's going to think about you all day. And then send her a message later on in the day to say, I'm thinking about you, honey. How are you? Do you need me to bring anything home when I come home today? Oh my gosh, like you are guaranteed to get some action. And for the women that I get them to open up again, they're like, I'm so glad I did this. Now I'm less stressed in my business. They don't realize how much they store up. And when you let go of that energy, you're not getting the stress release, the health benefits, you're not tapping into your creative energy. Like I said, it's the same energy. It's huge.
That's incredible.
Energy. We bottle it up and we bottle it up. There's no...
Yeah, absolutely. And for men, we want them to be more in touch with their emotions. We want them to be more vulnerable. Please just talk to me. But men connect physically before they connect emotionally, typically. And so if they're not getting their physical needs met, they are not going to feel like they want to open up in vulnerability. Whereas a woman will connect emotionally before physically, typically. Making some big generalizations here. And so she needs to feel the connection outside of the bedroom, whereas the guy needs to feel it inside the bedroom first. And then, he might be like, the next morning, he might say something over breakfast that he wouldn't have thought of opening up about before, right? And so we come with these different patterns of communication just in that aspect. And it's huge if you don't realize that you're holding back sex because of whatever reason. but there's also an impact on your partner. And you have to take that into consideration. That doesn't mean you do it if you don't want to, or let's just get this over with. But there can be conversations or things you do that are so easy that help you bridge that gap, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Many men today are objectifying the woman's body, right? Sexualization, and in view of all that's happening now, and we're following this, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. I realize that some women, there's a camp of women who rather enjoy this being, perceived this way by men, while others just really detest this, and I talked with a young woman recently who actually was very sincere about how she felt when men looked at her this way, right? And I kind of almost like it was such an authentic exchange that I kind of almost felt, how it must feel. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you also address in your coaching? I mean, some men are just wired this way, and they just it's almost like they can't stop. That's the way they love, Is that an indication that they're not in touch with their consciousness, and they're not really, they need transformation, that they're really
they're speaking from their ego typically.
It's the ego-based relation.
Virility,
right?
And I can appreciate it, but we've done such a good job of making it not okay for women to come forward or to be sexually confident, or to be sexually confident and not worry about the repercussions of that. And we've done such a good job of giving men a certain sexual power over women by not having conversations about what it feels like for some of these things. And now we're blaming men for things that happened 20 years ago, but they may have evolved. I think that that's unfair. Do I think that they need to face up the repercussions of their actions? Yes, 1,000%. But for them to be held accountable to something, if you held me accountable for what I did when I was 20, yikes, there's some things that I wouldn't do now at 42, but I did them then. That's part of learning. And, there's certain cases, of course, Harvey Weinstein, that was but it's not about sex either. It's about power. That's about power. It's not about sex, right? So the discussion really has to be opened up. And, I just think that we're in a time where we can't just perpetrate the people that are sexual aggressors. We have to look at the cause. Why did you seek power outside of yourself? Why did you choose this method to fill up that need of power? Why do you feel the lack of power? I need to have that discussion. I don't think we're doing anybody a service of not, because they're fathers, they're bosses, they're colleagues, they're brothers, they are in our world, and we don't want to just isolate them. And why are women in positions where they don't feel that they can set up their boundaries, where they feel like that is a necessary evil? You just got to do that. If we just take the acting business, I just got to have sex in order to get ahead. There's certain women that have never experienced that in their life because they have these boundaries. When this is a common thing that comes up, women are like, well, if I'm too in my sexual energy, I get approached inappropriately. That's not why. You don't own that sexual energy. I have guys make jokes all the time, but they don't cross a line, and I'm quick to tell them if they come close to that line. But I don't do it in a way where they're a bad person. They're doing that because it's worked for them in the past. It's something that, they were learned, they taught. And then when I have an honest, frank discussion and I'm not pointing fingers at them, they're like, oh, I didn't realize that approaching you that way was so offensive. It can be more so for others than for me, but let me tell you why. This is the perception that we're getting from you. And we need to have more and more of those conversations. I think it's really important, but to address all issues, not just, I think women need to be heard and respected and believed and understood, but so do the men. I want to have the conversation about the ones who've done it, or, I always say that, we've just seen the tip of the iceberg on this. There's so much more coming.
Yeah.
It's amazing that we are in the 21st century and we haven't really addressed this much, right?
Yeah. And now we're addressing it in, like, there's so many stories. I've talked to someone that lives in LA, and he's a wannabe aspiring actor. I shouldn't say wannabe, that's not nice. An aspiring actor. And if he goes to an audition where there's one change room, typically it's communal and people just go in and change and whatever, he won't change there because there's been so many accusations and false accusations happening that you have to be extra vigilant to protect yourself. And I think that of course a pendulum always swings when you have this kind of controversy, but like, we can't go to that extreme either. There was an actor just the other day, I can't even think of what his name is, Ashi something, I can't remember his name, and the woman accused him of inappropriate sexual advances, but then she gives her detailed account, and when I read it, I was like, why didn't you just walk out? There was at no point in the way she described it, and it was her voice, it wasn't someone transcribing, was he ever inappropriate? You never said no, you never asked him to stop. Maybe he was going faster than you wanted, but why are you in a position where you don't feel you can say no? Why did you feel you just had to stay there? And it sounds like he probably would have listened. Now, maybe he persisted more than once, but you didn't say no either. And it wasn't a case of rape. She wasn't claiming rape, but that it was, too sexually aggressive. And I just thought, oh, geez, if, poor guys. I felt bad for the guy.
These things, was it the last conversation where I was talking about the pendulum swing? But
before the last.
Yeah, but it always goes from one extreme to the other extreme, right? Mm-hmm. It's rare that there's anybody in a position, and maybe part of this is media. They don't want to highlight anybody who is a voice of reason.
Yeah,
right. They don't want that because it doesn't sell newspapers or whatever.
Right.
They want the shock.
Right.
So
absolutely.
They're gonna.
Yeah, or if they do report on it, they report on it because they're making them the bad guy. Somebody spoke out, some woman spoke out and said, we need to ask more questions about these people that are being accused, the men that are being accused. And she was ostracized. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Jodie Foster, or I could be making that up too. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I do think we need to have that discussion, not because we don't want to believe the women. I think we need to believe the women. We haven't for how many years now? But, is she coming from a place of, is she genuine, or is she pissed off because the date didn't go the way she wanted? Or, and I'm a woman saying this, I'm probably going to be ostracized myself, but I really want to have the full picture. And if it was what she said, which a lot of times it is, why did he feel that he needed to take that route? What is it? Why did he seek power outside of himself through sex? And we need to heal that, because a lot of men were raised thinking that is the case. We saw that in the case of that swimmer in the States. I can't remember what university it was, who was accused of rape and got off with barely anything to protect his swimming career, or whatever it was. And I heard a report about the way his father talked about it. Well, it was just a drunken woman, like whatever it was. And I thought, oh my God, here we are. This is exactly it. He's perpetrating what he was raised with. We have to have that broader discussion. Yeah. I don't know if that's reason. I might not be the voice of reason, but I just think it's unfair.
No, I think I agree with you 100%. That it's, people who are truly, preying on other people and things along that, people who are truly out of line need to be they need to face consequences,
Absolutely.
But just because somebody gets her nose out of joint, or he gets his nose out of joint for something, a snub or whatever, they shouldn't be able to just point at somebody and say they did all these things, and then that person is automatically tried and convicted, and it's going to happen. They're convicted in the public eye because there is no voice of reason from the media.
No, absolutely. And you touched on something, the question that men sexualize women. Not just men, women also sexualize women. We are so focused on our bodies and our body image, and part in society, but also generationally passed down. It's important to look a certain way and whatever. And we're seeing more and more body positive things happening in the modeling world. they're no longer looking for I think it's in France, they passed a law that, anybody that's a size 0 or emancipated or, like really thin they get fined if they use those kinds of models because they don't want that image perpetrated anymore. Like society is looking at different ways of seeing a body now, and ageism is another thing. People after a certain age no longer considered beautiful. Are you kidding me? I mean, have you seen some of these women and men that are people are getting better with age?
I think
I'm aging backwards.
Yeah. I think the idea of fining a company because they use a particular kind of model, that's wrong. The better route is educating the public and promoting the values that you want. Mm-hmm. You can't
I think
regulate
that they found
morality.
Yeah, I think they are, I don't know if I have a position necessarily on that, but they were finding that these modeling company agencies, brands, I don't know exactly, were encouraging the women to lose more and more weight. Mm. And so, a woman that is size 6, for example, is encouraged to be a size 2 or whatever it is. And, I have 3 daughters, so 3 daughters and a son. But
the answer is, if you're government and you want to do something about it, how about incentives for companies that are willing to go looking for models who aren't in that box, versus trying to penalize. I just think it's the backwards way of that's the pendulum swinging. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I haven't explored the issue more than that, but I think first of all, it's beautiful that we're addressing it. It's beautiful that somebody said, we can't get them starving and eating cotton balls as a regular practice because they're on a catwalk, Yeah. And like I said, I have 3 daughters that 2 that want to be singers and actresses and twins. And, I can't imagine them being put in that situation, but it could happen. That's the path they want to take. But we have very good conversations about body image and, what it means to be confident in your own skin, not by the definition of someone else. And that carries differently,
So I don't think you'll have that problem.
Hopefully not. I mean, let's see. They have their own patterns and programs that were there too,
Your boy is the youngest.
So much comes from the parents.
The youngest one, right?
Yeah, he's the youngest. Yeah. He's going to be a pro hockey player.
Cool.
Yeah. So he has, often people will say it's women that have body. It's not just women. I deal with as many men that have questions or concerns about their body as well. That it needs to be looked at and understood as well. Mm-hmm. My son is 12 and he's already said, well, when will I get abs? What? You're even paying attention to that? But he's in a pro athlete kind of training. That's he's seen pro athletes, I'm sure, with abs, and that's. I just wasn't prepared for the question, but it opened me up to some naivete I had around body image for men. So I think it's important that we have that conversation more broadly for everyone.
That's great.
I can see some stuff.
No, I also have a boy, 12. As you were saying that, right?
Yeah.
He was telling me, we were driving to the tennis class, and I was like, "Pops, when is puberty? Am I getting close to it?" He's like, no, you're safe. You're okay.
Yeah, it's true. It's
looking forward to shaving, I think.
Yeah.
Enjoy your time, man.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to watch them go through it. But I mean, that's another thing is how are we educating our kids around some of this stuff? I was so surprised. I had a friend who is an intimacy and relationship coach, and she was doing a survey about sex and sex education because she was going to work with some schools. And she had us, all her friends and clients, fill out the survey. And I said, well, let me ask the teenagers. It's for teenagers. Let me ask my teenagers to fill it out. And it was amazing the kind of questions they came up with. It wasn't necessarily what you think. It was, how do you know when you're in love? And, what does it feel like if you say no? Or what if someone says no to me? Like the conversation is much more than the biology, but we tend to only focus on the biology, right? And I think that, as a rule, I mean, that's why some of this Me Too and other awful situations have come about. We haven't had the broader conversation about this stuff.
Well, it's changing,
Yes.
right? And like so many of the things we have this, I'm going to repeat something that I've said over and over in other conversations that we've had with people, is that these sorts of changes they start at the grassroots level. And it's little by little and a little more here and a little more there. And it takes a while. And then all of a sudden you've hit the tipping point, and what feels like overnight has actually been 20 years in the making.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? So, but it comes out of having the discussions, having public discussions, so that other people even think about it in the first place, I suppose, to have those same conversations with their kids. And
we're definitely lucky to have you, Delora. We're now having like a little collection of this interesting episodes dedicated to this particular topic. Last one was that with Morgan Wonderly? Oh my God! You got to check out
Femininity. Yeah.
Yeah, Simply Feminine, an incredible book. She interviewed, I don't know, hundreds of men, I think, with the question, what is feminine to them?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's a great question.
Interesting research.
It was really interesting because you read it, and right from the beginning I was reading, and she's basically saying that this idea is foreign to a lot of women. And I'm reading it and going, well, of course. How could it? Why would that be foreign?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
that's a it's a no-brainer answer. But
so we have one answer from you, like doing dishes or laundry or whatever. To counterbalance this, Simply Feminine was giving prescription what makes us men crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's have the conversation. Pay attention to what she or he is looking for. If he doesn't like to be touched in public, maybe that's not where you're going to win a battle. But if she doesn't like flowers, don't waste your money on flowers. Pay attention. There's a book called The 4 Love Languages, I think. 5 love languages. I don't know. Figure out what your love language is, and you might have different ones. Some is act of service. Some is words. I need to hear it. Some, I don't remember them all. I've read the book, but I don't remember them all. But
some is social, I think, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important that you know what that is, and be willing to be open to it, and know that what I'm looking for may not be how you want it. So let's have a discussion about that.
Yeah. All right, I think it's time. Gabby, anything pressing?
Was going too fast. Yeah.
Okay. It really did go by really quick.
Go on. Yeah. It's such a relaxing conversation.
We'll just have to bring you back, and we'll have another conversation.
I would love to. That's great.
Cool. So before we wrap things up, though, let's let everybody out there know where to find you and best methods and what kind of flowers to send.
Roses. My middle name is Rose. I'm all about roses. So you can find me everywhere. #MindSexMentor. I'm Delora Guignon on all social media, and my website is mindsexmentor.com. And I have a private Facebook group called Mind Sex Mastery. Men and women are both in there. Feel free to jump in. I answer all kinds of questions. In fact, I just did a 9-day masturbation challenge, which helped people really realize where they're holding back in their bedroom, but also in business. They were shocked to see that some of the correlations between the two. So,
okay, would you do me a favor and spell? Because some people they'll just be listening, but would you spell your name and your website?
For sure, absolutely. So, Delora Guignon is DELORA. Guignon is GUIGNION. And Mind Sex Mentor is MindSexMentor.com.
Great. Thank you. I was more concerned about your name.
Yeah, that's great.
It's spelled just the way it sounds.
It is, yeah.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for joining us. This was really, really good.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it. I think we want to get you back here at some point to
Happy to.
Dig deep on maybe we'll pick something and get really down and dirty about it.
For sure.
It was great to get to know you, Delora. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was great talking to you guys.
Okay. We will let you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Tim Starr. Thanks for joining me and Gabi on the universe between your ears. We really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us for a little while. And we'd like to see you again. So be sure to subscribe wherever it is you're consuming the podcast from, whether it's YouTube or Stitcher or iTunes or whatever the hell else is out there. We want to see you again. We also want to hear from you. So let us know what you think of each episode. Let us know if you got an idea for a future episode that you think would be just killer. Absolutely, let us know. All right? Thanks again, and we will see you next time around. Bye-bye.